Hey guys, welcome to the next Insomnia Q&A episode where I answer some of the questions that people send me. And today I have several questions and I will get to them shortly. But first I want just to say that nothing here is a medical advice. I'm not a doctor, not a therapist, so I'm just sharing my general thoughts and ideas based on my personal experience with insomnia. So having said that, let's get started. The first question I have from Elisa, who writes the following. I think my main problem right now is about what time I should wake up for school. I have an anxiety about being late and anxiety of not sleeping when there is early waking alarm. I have morning classes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday where I have to arrive there by 9, the latest to get attendance. So basically she shares some details about her specific case. I can decide if I should wake up earlier times like 7:30 or later like 7:50 on school days. The problem is, if I decide to wake up too early to get to school, it seems to emphasize my anxiety of being late, and I want to show myself that being late is not a threat. But at the same time, waking up later emphasizes the fear of not sleeping enough, which I want also to show myself that it's okay. The most terrifying scenario for me is on midterm or finals day. I would go to the earlier site so I wouldn't be disqualified and have time to take the test. But again, I don't want to set a time too early that it makes exams seem important. I want to show myself that failure is okay, but I don't know if this is just my fear of not sleeping enough, playing mind games. Okay, so here Elisa has kind of like a double problem which creates contradiction between those two. So first of all, there is a fear of being late that she wants to approach, and then the fear of not getting enough of sleep. So fear of being late makes her want to actually get on the edge of being late so that so that she could teach the mind that it's okay to be late, so that she would not feel more anxious about that in the future. And then the fear of not sleeping enough, she wants to approach it by actually shortening, narrowing down her sleep window, waking up earlier. So we have this kind of two contradicting things. And I must say is that generally this kind of approach where we want to show the brain something by exposing to fear is something that is called usually exposure therapy. And in my experience, exposure therapy can be quite effective, but it's not the only thing that we need. In fact, sometimes when we use this type of exposure too often, it can actually backfire. And create this kind of paradoxical situations when we don't know what is the best, and then it creates a problem on its own. So in a way, we don't have to create situations on purpose that will take us to extreme anxiety. So in order for us, let's say, to learn to not fear being late, we don't have to actually be late. We just need to become aware of our thoughts and beliefs around being late for something, rather than actually presenting ourselves in such difficult situations. And the same thing is for fear of not getting sleep. In order to, let's say, overcome the fear, we don't have to actually extremely narrow down our sleep window just to show the brain something. The brain learns simply by observing you going through ups and downs of journey. And sometimes we don't actually need to create these artificial scenarios or artificially made situations that make us exposed, because I believe that during insomnia we are enough exposed to that fear. So whenever, let's say, exposure is available to us, that's fine, we can do that, but we don't have to really go to the extremes and seek it in every single situation. For example, here let's say the idea to make exams seem less important, or the absence of sleep less important, seems a little bit too, I would say, pressured, because it is normal to be anxious before exam. It is normal to, let's say, want to sleep well and feel good. It is nothing wrong about the desire itself. We just need to understand that that we are going to be okay with either outcome, but we don't have to actually to let's say, go against the human's nature in feeling good. We all want to feel good, and exams tend to be stressful, so we don't want to suddenly take away all our natural feelings about that. So I just want to kind of maybe validate the real true feelings about that, and maybe lower the pressure about going like with exposure on this situation. My answer here would be, it doesn't really matter at what time we wake up. What matters is that we of course we use here common sense and let's say the needed amount of time that we need to get to school, to get somewhere. We can calculate that, but it has nothing to do with, let's say, the sleep itself, or with the idea that we need to confront our fear of being late. When we make decisions not based on the fear of not getting enough sleep, but based on practicality, based on something that actually makes sense, then we teach our brain that whatever we do is not really important. So we kind of lower the importance of it by not taking the decision making so important. Because all we need to do, if we want to be on time, which is totally normal, the desire and the achievement, we can just count how much time we need to get somewhere, and based on that define when we wake up. And if that creates anxiety about not being able to confront fear of sleeplessness, then we can question that kind of activity. Maybe actually it is waking up earlier is what now becomes an effort, because it seems like without it we would not be able to improve our sleep, which again in itself is an effort. I don't know if that makes sense, but I try to outlay my general thoughts here. Just let me know if there is some further questions arise. Let me know in comments, okay? So the next questions are actually one question from Christelle. How can acceptance be a natural state and not a tool used to avoid unwanted feelings and symptoms? That is actually a very good question, because it shows that Christelle already has more understanding in the trickiness of whole situation. So basically, when we normally fear something, we tend to escape from it, and we try to do it with all different approaches. We fight with it, we avoid it, but in itself, when we begin to feel more accepting of that let's say feeling or symptom, then there is no more conflict, and there is no reason for that symptom or feeling to arise anymore. But here's the thing: when we begin to look at acceptance as that kind of pill or whatever, like trick to remove that unpleasant feeling, that can become an issue in itself. And my insight here is that acceptance does not always feels like a traditional acceptance. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we just think that acceptance is about this very pleasant and peaceful state when we are just like, oh, I'm okay with my anxiety, that's okay if I have heart palpitations and things like that. So we kind of like in a more positive way accepting it. But in reality, acceptance can look way different. Acceptance is also perhaps sadness, or it can look like giving yourself a permission to feel even not the prettiest emotions that there are, just giving a permission to feel that. You don't have to feel instantly relieved or pleasant about that permission, but you just don't create any more pressure on yourself in order to suppress whatever is already here. So let's say if we are in a highly anxious state and we find that it is not we are not really in the accepting mood, then it is completely normal to give yourself permission to not accept. And that becomes in its turn acceptance of not acceptance, which is the ultimate acceptance. And that can also remove so much pressure. And to make this state more permanent, we need time and experience with that. We cannot become accepting just by experiencing acceptance once. We need to keep going through ups and downs so that we make acceptance so present in every aspect of our issue that it just becomes natural to us, but time has to pass in order for that kind of long-lasting acceptance be there. But definitely we are going to get there, so I hope that was clear enough. Okay, so next question is how to stop the worry cycle. Well, I have a very good video which says that if you want to break a cycle, stop trying to break the cycle. So I know it sounds simple, easy, but it's not that easy. But I would say that in order to break the cycle, we just need to become aware of things that happen to us. And let's say if we are anxious, if we are frustrated, sometimes we need to face the reality in order to be able to work with it. Because oftentimes when we try to break the worry cycle, we begin to focus on some symptoms, on some particular thoughts or feelings. And what we often miss, we miss the bigger picture of what those symptoms actually are. And once we see them for what they are, which is automatic program that is here in us, installed in every single brain, that just triggers because the brain detects some possible danger on the horizon. So once we see it as a part of that autopilot, and we take it as that, as something automatic, something that we didn't consciously create, we didn't choose it, but it's there, and we don't have control over, let's say, we cannot stop it at will. Then we treat it more in a neutral way. For example, we treat it as hiccups, because let's say hiccups is something that happens naturally in our body. It's completely harmless. It's just the reflex that just starts happening, and however we try to work with it, to stop it, sometimes it just intensifies or just gets tricky. We begin to feel more anxious about it. But the truth is, any hiccup ends, and then once it ends, we might not even be aware of that moment. So we can completely approach this in the same way how we would approach hiccups. We could approach as well the worry cycle and worry, let's say, manifestations. Okay, Tali asks, what is the big difference between insomnia and somniphobia? Yeah, it's a good question. Basically, both are fear, but the difference here is that insomnia is the fear of not sleeping, or fear of some consequences that might happen from not being able to sleep. And somniphobia is basically fear of sleep itself. Usually people feel very scared of not being in control while they are asleep. So in general, this place when they are not aware of things starts to look very scary to them, and they kind of focus it on too much, so then it can lead to actually having sleep disruption. But behind both insomnia and somniphobia, there is fear process that's happening, and in a way, the things that we talk about here, how to approach fear, can be also applied to the somniphobia, fear of sleep. Okay, and the last question is from Sarah. The belief that insufficient sleep has cosmetic consequences, eye bags, etc. Yeah, that's a very common question, and I received it several times from my clients. You know, I had this worry too, and I can completely understand that we all want to look good. We don't want to have any visible effects from not sleeping. And with that being said, we also need to realize that the connection between, let's say, dark circles or bags under eyes, it's not that strong with sleep as we think it is. So we might actually challenge this. Does it always happen when we don't sleep that we have this? Let's say we don't look fresh, or possibly we can think of times when that was not true. Let's say we slept really good and we still looked puffy and dark circles and things like that. And the opposite, maybe the night was pretty bad, but then on the next day, the appearance was pretty good, pretty fine. So I just want to kind of maybe break the connection here between the appearance and the sleep itself. Of course, there's certain, things might happen, like, just extra puffiness or having eye bags, but these things I noticed that are not that connected as we think they are. And the last thing about this question is that, things pass. And even if there are some signs of not sleeping enough, let's say on our face and so on, these things are not permanent. The body can regenerate itself, it will recover itself. So whenever we experience something, it is not going to stay with us forever. It's something that the body will eventually kind of eliminate on its own. So I just want to kind of maybe lower the pressure on, even if you happen to have, let's say, some, tiredness on your face, then it doesn't mean that it will keep being like that. Maybe you can look at your personal experience and see that how those, let's say, cosmetic changes were not permanent, were actually, disappearing with time. I hope you found this episode helpful, and of course let me know if you have any further questions, comments. I would be really glad to answer them in my next Insomnia Q&A. And for now, I just want to thank you for listening and watching to me. Have a nice day. Bye.